Okay, hello everyone. Welcome back to Concordia University's Force Space. It's open house today, so thanks for joining us. For today's event, Varsity Athletics 101, how to become a Concordia Stinger. We would like to begin by acknowledging that Concordia University is located on unceded Indigenous lands in Chichage, Montreal. We respect the continued connections with the past, the present, and the future, and our ongoing relationships with Indigenous and other people within the Montreal community. Here at Force Space, we work with our university community to help mobilize knowledge by co-creating daily activities that examine research questions, projects, sports, things happening all across the university. We're running today's event as a live stream to YouTube and as a Zoom meeting. So those of you joining us there, if you have any comments, questions, pop those into the chat. We'll do our best to read them out. And those of you joining us here in the space, if you have any comments or questions later on, just raise your hand. We'll run a microphone around to you so that everyone can hear. Okay. But that's very much my pleasure to hand the microphone over to Varsity Academic Coordinator with Recreation and Athletics, Craig Beemer. Craig, it's great to have you in.
Yeah, thank you for having us. We're happy to be here at Open House. I know that there's a lot of questions coming from students. We get students from all over the world, and obviously our coaches can't recruit all over the world, so we're happy to answer those. I think one of the big questions is how you become a Concordia Stinger. So we'll start with that, and then we'll go through. We have two Stinger varsity athletes with us, Phil and Elsa, and I'll be asking them some questions so that you can kind of get an idea of what it's like to be a Stinger. And then we'll have questions after that. So as you mentioned, so really to get started, when we talk about recruitment at Concordia and our athletics department, our coaches, you hear a coach and you're like, oh, he's at practice, he coaches, and then he goes to the games. Coaching at the university level, a lot of it is recruitment as well. So a lot of our coaches will be at in Quebec, the CEGEP games, so going to college games, watching players that are anywhere from 16 to 20 years old, basically, and keep tracking them, talking to coaches at the colleges, and building relationships there. But most of our athletes at Concordia are from Quebec, and they're recruited through the CEGEP systems. So, yeah, and a lot of the communication is direct. So in that situation, so our coaches will approach the college coaches. Hey, do you mind? A lot of the time they'll talk with the teams, congratulate them on a good performance, and then reach out to those individually. That's the majority of our athletes, our varsity athletes at Concordia. The other side is we do have players from all across Canada. We do have international athletes on, I would say, most of the teams, actually. And when it comes to that, a lot of it is, and it's been really nice to witness. I do coach as well in the department. Young people are doing a very good job of approaching us, typically via email. They do a wonderful job of introducing them not only with their sport, but their academics. And then the key component is that they usually provide a sports resume, CV resume, and a highlight video. If a potential incoming student who is an athlete puts that forward and their highlight video and their resume is at the level of university sport, I'm fairly certain that our coach is going to contact them and see where they're at and see if they're actually interested in Concordia University, because you have some that really just want to come to Concordia, and then there's some that are obviously sending emails to a lot of coaches and seeing what feedback they can get. And then it could range from, depending, we have varsity level 1 and we have varsity level 2 sports. But even then there's differences. Like, I know our men's basketball team have brought people in for individual workouts. So it starts with the highlight video and the CV, and it's like, okay, we'll have you come in, whether it's, from BC coming into Montreal and having an individual workout. And it goes all the way down to I really like your resume and I really like your highlights. We'd welcome you in for an invite tryout. So there's no guarantee that you make the team, but from what we could see, we'd be happy to have you come to our training camp and compete for a spot. So it goes anywhere from that when it's we'll say out of town or out of province people. And then typically all of our training camps are in August. So that's really important to know that your school is going to start here after Labor Day. But if you're on the football team as of August, you're here at training camp. And I believe rugby is like 1 week in, 2 weeks in to August. So you're going to be in Concordia by mid-August if you want to play varsity sports. And I know a lot of international students, you reach out and stuff like that, and you're like, okay, I booked my flight. And it's like, no, actually, like, I know your flight is for Labor Day weekend, but you have to come in on August 5th or 6th for the training camp. Because that's another thing, they're student athletes, right? So one of the real benefits of having the training camps in August is they're not in classes yet. So we expect our athletes to be here earning degrees. It's a really big time commitment to be a Stinger athlete, and I'll get into that a little bit later, but like that training camp is super important so that we can, welcome them into a new environment, potentially if they're not from Montreal, and really put a lot of the foundation and building blocks in for that. There are a couple teams that have tryouts. Our rugby and soccer teams are two teams that definitely will welcome tryouts, whether it's a 1-day tryout or like 2 or 3 tryouts, just at that level, because in those sports it makes sense. Whereas something in like basketball and mainly like our men's hockey, if they don't make the NHL and their pro contract isn't great, like a lot of those players end up playing university hockey. So coming from a recreational league, it just doesn't make sense. You're not at the level. So we have people that are almost pro athletes that didn't quite make it, or they've decided, you know what, I don't want to ride a bus in the minors. I'd rather get my degree, and they're coming back. And we have programs where phenomenal athletes that have only played the sports for 2 or 3 years might be able to come in and, it's a 4-year degree or a 3-year degree. We see potential, and you can, progress through those 3 or 4 years here as a varsity athlete. So the level of ability is quite different of what we're recruiting depending on the sport. Another thing that's been recently popular is that our men's basketball program just started it this year, and I believe our soccer team, men's soccer program, and has been doing it for a few years. They have reserves teams. So in that situation, they have teams that are running separately. They've got them games and stuff like that. And it's almost like they have like a sub team that they can call up if necessary, or they can go through the process of like working their way. They're working with coaches that are still our varsity coaches. And then maybe over 1 to 2 to 3 years, they end up making on the varsity team that way. A lot of our programs, so these are maybe not for the people watching this, but they're younger brothers and sisters. We have, I'm just looking to where it, we have academies offered by our hockey, soccer, rugby, cross country, and track and field is new, and football camps as well. So that's for basically anywhere from U14 to U20. So if there are people watching that are in the area and they're looking to, eventually play university, those sports have our academies that often run during March break or in the winter, because our university is very fortunate. We have a dome. So even though we're in Montreal, we can play sports year round. Our fall sports are outside. We have 2 turf fields. So basically August to November, we're outside, and then the dome goes up for November. It's just been put up in the last week or so, and it's active November 1st. So rugby and football and soccer can still be played without the worry of snow. And I think that takes care of recruit. I actually don't mind if I've missed anything right now while we're on that. Is there any questions about recruitment? Or we can just save it to the end. Okay. And then I really want to hear from them soon in what their experience is. But basically just a general thing for commitment and what it takes, like the time commitment. A varsity athlete typically spends 20 to 30 hours a week dedicated to their sports when they're in season. And the reason it varies is because we don't know where we're traveling. A home game, probably closer to 20 hours a week, but if we have to go to Quebec City and travel and you have to be there early because you don't know what traffic is, it could be more than 30 hours a week for like our football teams. And our men's hockey team actually plays a lot of games in Ontario. So I'm assuming they could be even above 30 hours. The minimum you can expect on our varsity teams in season is probably 15 hours a week dedicated to sport. And the main reason is for that is it's not just practice. Film at all levels of competitive sport has become a really big deal. So most teams have a platform where all the games in the leagues are put up. So you can actually watch your opponents play and dissect film that way. So a varsity athlete, I don't want to get into too much details because I think that'll come from them a little bit, but like on kind of how those 20 to 30 hours break up. But yeah. And then even in the off season, this is a program that every year our teams are trying to get better. So even though soccer, rugby, and football, our seasons are in the fall, having that dome is really big for us. And we all programs have their own strength and conditioning coach, and they get 6-week programs and stuff like that. So you can still expect to be training 8 to 15 hours a week in the winter. If you're a fall season. So it is year-round training, year-round training, eight months training from August to exams in April. Yeah, that's, I guess the other thing is we do have year-long sports. So we have hockey and basketball that when I say year-long sports, they're in August. It's a little more laid back and not as intense in August, but they're still there in August typically, and their seasons will run, generally speaking, November, at the start of November, all the way to into March, when the national championships are. I think that kind of is a decent overview of our athletics department and what we do. Actually, I should mention what we have, considering that was the first thing in my notes. Our co-ed sports are basketball, hockey, soccer, rugby, wrestling, cross country, track and field, and golf. And then when it comes to men's only, we have a football team that competes. And great news this year, we've actually added a varsity sport. They've been on a trial basis for 2 to 3 years, and this year they're officially a varsity recognized sport here at Concordia, and it's flag football. So our women's team, our women's flag football program has been around now for a few years. They're quite good, but they officially are recognized through the RSEQ, which is the Quebec University League. So yeah, let's get into more entertaining stuff. So as I said earlier, we have Phil, varsity men's rugby player, and Elsa, varsity women's rugby player. We're here on a Saturday. A lot of our sports teams are competing today or traveling. But I think these two will give a great overview of what it's like to be a varsity athlete. So I talked about the nuts and bolts from a coaching standpoint, but I'll put this question out to you. You can touch on what you wish, but growing up before you got to Concordia, how did you get involved in your sport, and how did Concordia from a recruitment sort of way come on to you guys for, sorry, I'm not saying this very well, but how did the recruitment start for you guys? Was it coach involved? Was it more you guys reaching out to Concordia or what have it?
I think for me, I started playing rugby in high school. I think I went to Loyola High School here in Montreal, and I grew liking for the sport in grade 9, so I started playing there. And then from then on, I played through high school. I played for my club season, and then got into CEGEP, which is in Quebec, like the sort of pre-university grade 12 equivalent. I played 2 years there, and then I got recruited to play at Concordia. At the time, the head coach his name was John Lavery. He was the head coach. He recruited a few of us that year to come play. He's no longer head coach, but basically he kind of talked to us through games. Tom Smith as well came to a lot of our a lot of our games, talked to us, basically just said, hey, like, we'd like to have you. And then from then on, because I was a Quebec resident and a Quebec student, the recruitment process was pretty straightforward from then on. Like, I kind of just applied and then I eventually got accepted. But for international students, the process is a little bit different. So I think it really depends. Like Beemer kind of touched on it before about how like there's a lot of, you can send in videos, you can get in touch with the coaches through email, and there's definitely a lot of ways to get in touch with the coach. It's more just a matter of, I guess, where you live and I guess where you grew up. So yeah, anyways.
Mine was pretty similar as well. I grew up in Montreal and I went to, I live in the West Island, so I went to high school at John Rennie. I got into rugby pretty late, actually. I started my last year in high school. At the time, I was in Spillerstood over there for hockey. I'd been playing hockey for 10 years at that point. I got into the sport completely by accident. And because I got into it later, I kind of just didn't think that like, you know, university sports was going to be, you know, an option for me. That said, I did get into it at John Abbott. I had a great time there. And I was starting to look at Concordia has an amazing athletic therapy program here. We're one of, I think, not even 10 schools in the country that are recognized for their athletic therapy program. So I knew for sure, like, regardless of what was happening with recruitment, and if a coach from another school did come out to me, reach out to me, like Concordia was really my only option. But with that said, Beemer came up to us. He's also the head coach for women's rugby. So he did approach me at one of my games, early in the season. Well, you spoke to us like as a general overview early into the Abbott season last year. And some of my now teammates were also there as well. And so I kind of was like, okay, like I'll think about it. And, you know, and until it was like later on the season, we actually had a one-on-one conversation. And before we even spoke about rugby, Beemer asked me flat out like what my grades were like, and you know, academically, like was I a strong student? Was it going to be possible for me? And yeah, from that point on, we kept in touch, and I was fortunate enough to start playing with the team like as of last winter, and this year was my first season. So yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, actually, just to touch on a couple of things that they said, Phil mentioned Tom Smith, and it just triggered in that our coaching staff does hire recruiters as well, in the sense of like we're playing in season, and sometimes the sport we're recruiting in that season. So we can't necessarily get out to all the games. So we definitely, I know women's hockey, rugby in this case, they hire people to go out and watch the games and try and help recruit that way. And then if they find a player, they're like, oh, they'll come back and like, I talked to them, but you should really make sure you get out to that team and watch them play, and certain individuals and stuff like that for sure. It's really helpful. And at the end of the day, I think what Elsa just touched on is super important, that these are student athletes. I'm a coach and an academic coordinator. But even when I said the hockey guys, like they almost turn pro and then it doesn't work out and they are here for their degrees. So it's really important that conversation is being had by our coaches, and it always is. Like there are some people that are only here for the sport. And without naming names, I can think of one individually that came for the sports and now she's a master's student. So it can go anywhere, but it's really important that they're student athletes. And you know, sometimes the conversation can just be like, okay, well, maybe like I want to know, I'm interested in academics. Like I have a big part of that at the school, and so I automatically ask questions and grades. But it could just be as simple like, okay, you want to go to university, but you don't have the grades to get in. Okay, well then maybe it's that the conversation has to end there, and I have to tell you that you need to buckle down for the next couple of semesters and try and get your what in CEGEP is called like an R score, Coter, or in high school your grade point average up. Yeah, I think another big question, and just put it very simply, like you can talk in season or out of season, but what's it like being a Stinger athlete? Like what's a typical, you can start with like, what's it like in general, or a typical week for you guys, however you want to answer that.
So I can kind of speak from the men's rugby perspective, because obviously every single sport's a little bit different. Like hockey's different, football is different. So for us, a typical, I guess, year for or a week for the Stingers athlete. So I guess like Beemer said before, we start in August for training camp. It's usually like a 2 week, sort of 3 week, depending on the sport, intensive. Every single day you're in there, like learn the system, like guess learning how the team operates. Then from then on, when you're in season, rugby is one of those seasons where it's very short. We only have 6 games during the season. So as of the first weekend of September all the way to halfway through October, like the season's done. So like you can go on to playoffs and nationals, which go into November, but for rugby, it's very, very quick. Yeah, so basically for us, we had practice usually on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Fridays, and then depending on when our game was, if our game was on a Sunday, then maybe we'd throw in another what's called a captain's run, which is another practice kind of between there. So usually between 3 to 4 practices a week, and then every single week you have a game. And then you mix in lifts too. We have like an amazing gym facility as well, the Perform Center, and we lift usually as a team twice a week, but you're kind of expected to lift more as well. And then when the season's over, we move into off season. It kind of dials back a little bit in terms of, I guess, the volume. You have practice twice a week, and then usually like 2 lifts as well. And then you start to ramp up for the following year. And like Beemer said, we got the dome, which is a super, super cool asset to have, because it allows us to train year round and like build and get that sort of edge over other schools, which is what's something that's really cool about Concordia as well.
Again, similar, we're in the same sport, so we kind of have the same schedule, except mine is more, you guys practice at night. I don't know from what time, but my schedule, I think, was first time in a while. Our practices are in the middle of the day. So we're from 1 to 3 on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, with a game on usually Saturday. And again, like Phil said, like we do have like team lifts, but we are expected, if you can't make that team lift because you have class or whatnot, you're expected to lift on your own. It sounds like a lot. It does. I won't lie. And at times it can be. But my schedule, like I'm in a program that, like, I don't know how to really explain it, but our class times are pretty set. Like they're not like, okay, Monday, this class is offered from 10 to 11. And then on Tuesday, the same class can be offered from 5 to 6. That's not the case in my program. It's like the classes are set and they're across the week and you just pick your day. I'm fortunate enough, my schedule did align pretty well. I was able to attend all 4 practices, but like again, academics is the priority. If you had to miss practice or a little bit of practice or whatever it may be to attend class or to attend internship, like that was totally cool as well. And I mean, the whole thing, again, like my season is pretty short. Unfortunately, we are not playing this upcoming weekend, but it's a whole other story. It like, honestly, if anyone's like kind of worried about the course load, and like I'm very type A when it comes to my academics, like I take it very seriously. Again, at the end of the day, like I'm here for athletic therapy. I'm here for this program. I still think like as long as you're on top of it, it's totally doable. I come from, when I was at Abbott, I actually, again, during training camp, I had a friend of mine who like came out, and by the 3rd day, like she was like, hey, this is a lot. Like, and at that time, like CJEP schedule is nowhere near university schedule. And she just like, her parents were kind of, okay, go out, you enjoy it. But like at the end of the day, like we kind of don't want you playing rugby because it's a lot. We don't want to take it away from your school. And she ended up sticking around, and she's one of the best, strongest students I know in university or CJEP level. And yeah, no, I really think like if you have any doubt at all, like just have the conversation with the coach and like really work it out. But I think it's possible. Like if you really want to do it, you totally can.
Perfect. To touch on that and things they talk about practice times, it varies in sport. So we have teams like soccer and hockey that generally train in the morning, so they practice in the morning. Our basketball teams are, for lack of better words, all over the place. They can train in the morning, they can train in the evening. Sometimes that's due to coaching schedules, right? We have We have coaches that are full-time coaches and we have coaches that are part-time coaches and work during the day. So those teams are obviously going to be training in the evening. It really depends on the sport when the practice times are going to be. Talking on other sports and stuff, like if we get into it, there's a lot of time, there's video analysis during the week. There's team lifts that they mentioned during the week. There's their 3 to 5 practices a week, depending on the sports. Practices are typically 90 minutes to 2 hours in length. And believe it or not, when it comes to in season and out of season, every athlete is different. And because I have that academic component, I get to see it. Some people find their in-season sport, they do the best academically because their schedule is set for them and they know they have to study Wednesday evenings. So every Wednesday evening they're studying, and like every Friday morning they're studying because they have no other options. And then they love the structure, and then they get into their off season and like the grades aren't that different, but they're like, it's actually easier to be busy because I know like I'm not going to have a moment where like, oh, I'll do it next week. I got all the time in the world. And we know how that can go sideways sometimes pretty quickly. 12:42. So one more question. I think I'll make it a two-parter because really I have written down what's your favorite part of being a student athlete, but maybe we'll make that twofold of like, what would be the most difficult thing about being a Stinger athlete? And what would be like, you can choose one or the other, or you can do both, but what's your favorite and what's the most difficult thing about being a Stinger athlete?
Okay, I'm going to talk about, I guess, my favorite part about being a student athlete, just because I think what's really cool about Concordia is how like close a lot of the teams are. I think between like the men's and the women's team for rugby, for example, I feel like we all get along super well. And there's definitely that sense of like companionship and camaraderie amongst teams, which is really, really cool. There's all sorts of like study groups online on Facebook. There's all sorts of like events and stuff that we plan like to go as a team. So I think that's one of like the coolest things about being a student athlete. And also internally with your team, I think there's nothing better than being part of like a university team. Like I've played on sports teams for my school my whole life. And I think like at university, it's really like a different experience. Everyone's older, everyone's like more mature. And I think it adds to a lot of it. So I think for sure, just that team, like the team spirit and team energy is definitely the best part about being a student athlete here.
I just want to add to that just because I do really like that question. Yeah, like Phil said, like there's really nothing like having, in our case, I have 40 people that, like endlessly support me and, come from all different backgrounds. Like I have teammates from France, I have teammates from Belgium, I have teammates from South Africa, like who come all the way here. And like, you just see to hear like, okay, what's it like back home? Like that's another thing. And like one of my teammates is one of my TAs in some of my classes. So like you kind of get an insider as well. So it's kind of fun. But in terms of like, I think what was the other question? It was like how hard, what the hardest?
What would be the most difficult part of being a Stinger athlete in your opinion?
Well, honestly, it's pretty much what you'd expect. It's really like finding that balance between academics and athletics. Another thing too, honestly, like at least with rugby and our sports, obviously a very physical sport. And like practice time or meeting time or whatever, you have to take care of your body, and that takes more than just 30 hours a week. Like you'd have to dedicate, like an hour to like actually stretch or go get checked out by the ATs and do your treatments just so that you're okay and you can be ready for the game that week or practice efficiently, effectively, everything. So finding the time to, again, like make sure you're on top of your stuff with school, attending practices and being in like that headspace, like flipping the switch from school to like, okay, now I'm here. I have to be at rugby. I have to be at my sport. And then coming home and having to like take care of your body, but then also study. That honestly is probably, at least like maybe I'll get used to it. Maybe it's a rookie thing. I don't know. But for me, that was the hardest challenge.
Yeah, I'll just add one more thing. I think just to build off what else I just said, I think one of the challenges, I guess, like she mentioned, is the fact that time management is so crucial. And one thing that you kind of realize pretty quickly is that you have to be good at like learning how to do things in blocks, right? Because if you have training from 7 to 9, and then you have a lift from 5 to 7, and then you have a meeting, like a team meeting, because we have a film review and stuff like that, an hour before that, you have to know that the time between your class, if you have like 2 hours before class, like between your last class and the start of your meeting, that your entire evening is booked up or your entire afternoon is booked up. So you have to really get good at sort of planning accordingly with your schedule and kind of finding blocks, like Beemer said, about when you have to study that Wednesday evening. So that's like the biggest challenges. It was for me, at least, is trying to figure out when I have the extra time to study, when I have the extra time to do work, just because it makes all the difference in the long run, especially if you're taking 4 or 5 classes during a season, it gets challenging. So I think that's the big thing, or the biggest piece of advice I'd be able to give.
Perfect, thanks. Yeah, I think the important, like not important, but just to note that Elsa's in her first year, so she's coming straight from the recruitment process and kind of figuring university out as a first year would. And Phil's in his 3rd year now, so you know he's a senior on the team, graduating this year or next. One more year, that's what I thought. So they're important to know there are 5 years of eligibility. Coaches love when you stay for all 5, but that could also mean doing 2 degrees. So in Quebec, it's a 3-year degree, and masters are typically 2 years, or you can extend. It's not uncommon to extend an extra semester, especially when you have a fall sport. So you know, just working it that way. I think one thing that's interesting for me as an older person now, I didn't go to Concordia. I went somewhere else for my university experience. And it was really eye-opening to me at Concordia, because Concordia has, you know, we'll say 10 to 12 varsity teams, like different sports. And it's much more intimate. So my experience, my department, athletics department, when I was a student, had like, I couldn't even tell you, I'm going to say way over 20 sports. And it was almost like we were in silos, and like I knew everybody, like I knew other people and stuff like that, but it was like it's kind of our own team, was our own environment. Whereas, you know, my first year of Concordia, watching like hockey and basketball and soccer like in the complex, like together, like they were just one community, I guess is the easy way to put it. I was like, one of the first things I said, is that normal? Like, is that like that's just what this is? And I, you know, after a year, I was like, oh, it's just kind of like ingrained in the department. If it's a lot more like, it's smaller, so it's like anything, like a small town, everybody knows everybody, whereas you go into a metropolis and you don't know 90% of the people. But I think that's another thing that's important to know about Concordia, because our department's not the biggest. It's really cool to see how the athletes intermingle, and it has not like there's like, yes, there's segregation, a little bit of sports and stuff like that, but overall it's great to see how supportive, and like he said, even academically, like sharing classes together, like it's not just by sport, like they communicate. It's easier nowadays online and all that, communicating about who's in what class, but I think that was it's a really good point that they brought up. The sport community at Concordia is really top notch in how I just witness athletes get along together, regardless of how many hours they have to put on in their sport and how they have to manage their time. I think that's enough from us. So the last part is question and answer. So if there's anybody on the YouTube or Zoom or here in person that has a question, feel free to ask.
Yeah, if anyone has questions on Zoom or YouTube, just pop those into the chat. We can read those out, Jax. I don't know if we're seeing any. We have time for a couple questions in the space, but we'll also close up afterwards. And maybe if you had a question directly, you could come up and talk to one-on-one. But if you have a question now, just raise your hand. You can bring a microphone over. Go on.
Hi. I didn't hear volleyball as the sports that you mentioned, right? It's not included in varsity team?
No, so there's no, our facilities, like our teams are small, but our facilities are also small. So we currently don't have a gym that is formatted for an actual RSEQ official sport. So that's one block, but we do have a gym. We do have intramural volleyball program. So it's not the same, but if you're a student here and you want to play volleyball, you do have that opportunity, but not at the varsity level.
One last question. Is there any opportunity in the following years that volleyball might become a varsity, or might have varsity team?
There's a big process, like I said, with the flag football. A lot of it comes from the top down. Like, I'm not pushing this off on other people, but flag football has blown up and the province has made it a bit of a priority. And over the last 4 years, our flag football team has gone from not part of our department to a trial sport in the RSEQ, which is the league, and now a varsity sport. So there is that line of communication. But we also have a full stadium and football field. So as of right now, with our current limitations on our facilities, it's not feasible. But there is a pathway, and we actually have non-varsity sports, but we have club sports. So we have a tennis team that is competitive, and it's run through the Concordia Student Union. So there's different avenues, but as of right now, volleyball is not something we can take on.
Had one question over here. Maybe this will be our last one.
So you mentioned like facilities and the gym and all that. I just want to, and the dome. I want to know like what are like all the facilities you guys have regarding sports. Like you guys have the dome. I saw in the tunnel system here, there's like the gym.
Yep.
I don't know if you guys use that gym. I know there's another gym somewhere. I don't know where.
Yeah, that's a great question. Concordia is very interesting, at least for me anyways, that we do have 2 campuses. But for me, I always thought if you had 2 campuses, they might be located like in different cities and stuff like that. Our campuses are, they have a shuttle bus that runs back and forth. And depending on traffic, 20 to 30 minutes gets you from one campus to the other. Sir George Williams is right here downtown, and our Loyola is based out in NDG. So our varsity sports are generally housed in NDG. So, and we have the Perform Center, which Phil alluded to for their strength and conditioning sessions and stuff like that. So we have a main Perform Center out in Loyola. We have our arena out there. And we have our gym out there for our basketball team. It's actually it's 3 different buildings. Well, yeah, 2.5 different buildings, but everything's there. So you don't go outside for any of that. And then we have 2 full-size, basically turf fields that you can play soccer and football on, and rugby. So that's basically our Loyola facilities. And then here, it's more of our campus recreation side of things. So there is a half gym there. So I know they do have like pickup basketball and badminton here on intramural stuff. They also do a lot of drop-in classes. So anywhere from like dance classes like tango and stuff like that, to yoga classes, to Zumba, I think is like, no, I shouldn't look at these 2 obviously. But those type of classes, which I'm assuming are pay to go. But yeah, there are 2 different sections. And if you think about it from just a campus recreation side of things, there's a lot of stuff down here with the gym and those classes. And then if you want to play varsity sport or intramurals, it's out in NDG. And the shuttle bus, I think, is not today. It's a special shuttle bus, but it's usually Maisonneuve is right here. And it drops you off on Sherbrooke right in front of the turf fields.
Just a like follow-up last question. You mentioned about the dome. For the varsity like soccer or football team, for example, in the winter time, do they just train or do they also play like friendly games with other universities nearby or stuff like that?
Our football team just trains. They're under it's a collision sport, so it's pretty like rugby's very, very similar. But they're under strict rules and stuff like that. So they're not allowed to play games. And then the soccer and rugbies and stuff like that, you can have exhibition friendly matches, but there's typically nothing official. Rugby does have some sevens. So there's 2 different types of rugby sport. There's 15 aside and 7 aside. So I know our rugby teams do have more competitive 7 stuff in the winter, and our soccer has some competitive league as well. So it depends on the sport. But the majority of it's training in the dome. So at best, inter-squad would be the main competition.
Craig, thank you.
Our pleasure.
Elsa, Phil, it's good to have you all in here. We don't hear enough actually about athletics here at Force Space. It's actually really great to hear just like kind of the in behind the scenes of like what it's really like, what the experience is. And we all really appreciate you coming in and also for the questions. Those of you online joining us, we're going to be closing up the Zoom and the live stream now. This remains available though on our YouTube channel, and you should revisit it and share it there. Also, if you're checking it out, you don't forget you could search in the transcript for key parts if you're looking for specific information. And have a great open house. Thanks again.